Good afternoon, gentlemen and women. This afternoon, we were at the Constitutional Court of Zambia, and we basically went there to file a petition against the continued wastage of public resources by President Hichilema in his numerous foreign trips, which he has been undertaking incessantly for the past 2 years since he ascended into office. So essentially, this is the petition that we filed before the Constitutional Court. As you can see, it is actually dated today, which is the 21st of August. Excuse me. Now, the whole idea behind this petition is that when you look at the foreign trips that President Hichilema has been undertaking in the past 2 years, you realize that they go far and over what is expected of a head of state to basically address national issues. And it is our contention that the president is actually using these foreign trips to undertake personal business activities, and he's basically using the position of Republican president to enjoy himself as a tourist by basically sightseeing the entire globe. You must remember that whenever the president travels outside the country, his entire bills are fully settled by the state, by the Zambian people. And we did a rough estimate of how much it actually costs to travel on average per trip. And we came up with a total estimated cost of slightly over 2 billion kwacha for the 49 trips that the Republican president has undertaken so far since he ascended into office. And our view is that this amount is very big. It is very huge, especially for a country like Zambia, which has a lot of competing needs. You must remember that we are a developing country, and we have a lot of competing needs, socio-economic needs. When you go to most parts of this country, you'll find that the majority of our learners, especially primary school pupils, still learn under a tree due to lack of classroom space. And so you have those competing needs. We have circumstances whereby the majority of our people have to travel a long distance for them to be able to access clean drinking water. We have circumstances whereby the majority of our roads are impassable, and people basically struggle to move from one point to the other. So all those are competing socio-economic needs which this country needs to address as a developing nation. And under those circumstances, if you have one individual in the name of a Republican president basically getting a larger slice of the cake in terms of the national revenue and allocating that big slice to himself and using that money to undertake numerous foreign trips where he actually proceeds to sleep in 7-star hotels. And yet we have people who are unable to even be able to have a classroom so that their grade 1 pupils can learn, whereby they have to learn under a tree. And when it rains, then they get soaked. And when it's windy, then their eyebrows look very dusty. That is not acceptable. And we saw it necessary that someone needed to stand up and challenge the president to say, you need to stop abusing these public resources. You need to ensure that even if you are the head of state, you allocate public resources fairly and equitably. There are a lot of hospitals across the country which do not have medication, and yet we have a huge slice of allocation in terms of tax revenue going to the president so that he can undertake his foreign trips. So that is the basis of our petition against the president, and we are hopeful and confident that we are going to get justice in this particular matter. And basically, I also wanted to take this opportunity to highlight just my personal observations in terms of the competence and objectivity of the Constitutional Court that we have under the New Dawn administration. You must remember that the initiative of forming the Constitutional Court was first generated under the previous PF regime. And we did have the Constitutional Court since the previous PF regime, which has continued under the current regime. Now, for me and my party, we have always contributed to the jurisprudence of this country. We have always been very active in taking matters to the Constitutional Court, both during the PF regime. We had a number of matters during the PF regime. Those who have a good memory will remember that we actually took President Edgar Lungu to court over that Eswatini land gift that was given to him, where we contended that that gift was illegal because it was not authorized under the Anti-Corruption Act. And we took that matter to the Constitutional Court. So we have been before the Constitutional Court under the previous regime. And then under the current regime, we've taken a number of cases to the Constitutional Court, including the case where we challenged President Hichilema to declare his assets, as well as other pending matters which are before the Constitutional Court, such as compelling President Hichilema to move to Kwazi House, as opposed to him wasting public resources, commuting between his private residence in Kasama, New Kasama, to State House where his office is. We also took a matter relating to the tribalism and regionalism being practiced by President Hichilema to the Constitutional Court. So we have been very active in the Constitutional Court, both under the PF regime as well as under the UPND regime. And we believe that as a party, we've taken the largest number of cases to the Constitutional Court. And so we have a solid position on the basis of which we can share an observation in terms of the conduct of the Constitutional Court. So our observation is that the Constitutional Court under the Patriotic Front regime was reasonably more objective compared to this Constitutional Court that we have under the UPND regime. And that should be a source of concern to every well-meaning Zambian, because we all rely on the judiciary as a final fallback to resolve the conflicts that we have in society, whether they might be personal conflicts or political conflicts or whatever sort of conflict. So when the integrity of the court is brought into question, then that should be a source of concern to every well-meaning Zambian. And based on my observations, based on the cases that we have taken before the Constitutional Court under the New Dawn administration, under President Hichilema's administration, we have noticed that this Constitutional Court under President Hichilema lacks a spine. It lacks a backbone. It lacks the ability to objectively adjudicate on the issues and cases which are brought before it. When you bring a case before the Constitutional Court, you can literally observe the attitude of the presiding judges, that they do not expect anyone to challenge the government. They do not expect anyone to challenge the president. And such an attitude coming from a court which is supposed to be impartial is very worrisome, whereby at the end of the day, they adopt an attitude of intimidating the petitioners, whoever brings a matter before court, if that matter actually challenges government or it challenges the president. This is quite different to how the conduct and behavior of the Constitutional Court was under the PF regime. Because under the PF regime, you must remember that under the PF regime, the Constitutional Court then actually ruled on a number of cases against government, including the case where ministers needed to pay back the salaries that they got when Parliament was in recess. So the Constitutional Court under the PF regime, in my view, had some backbone. It had some spine. It had a reasonably higher level of integrity and objectivity in terms of its ability to adjudicate matters that were brought before it, especially matters that were against government and that were against the then Republican president, compared to the Constitutional Court under the current dispensation. It is worth noting, countrymen and women, that the Constitutional Court under the current dispensation has not ruled against government on any matter so far. It has not ruled against government on any matter so far, except a few issues where consent judgment was actually arrived at between the parties themselves. So my considered view is that we need to see, better performance from the Constitutional Court justices, because that is the final court in this country. That is a court of final jurisdiction. And if we are going to have a court which believes that its purpose is to protect the interests of government, if we are going to have a court which believes that it cannot rule against the government and it cannot rule against the president, then we have a big problem. We have a big problem, because the way society functions is that when we pick up conflicts, which we always do as members of society, we always pick up conflicts against one another. It might be one organization against another organization. It might be one political party against another political party. It might be one group of citizens against another group of citizens. The bottom line, countrymen and women, is that whenever system we resort to the judiciary, the expectation is that the judiciary will actually fairly adjudicate on that particular matter. So when we have a constitutional court, which in my view is compromised, lacks objectivity, and believes that its purpose is to protect the interests of government, its purpose is to protect the interests of the Republican president, then we have a big problem. We have a very big problem. And I'm hopeful that the justices of the Constitutional Court, each one of them, will introspect and will look themselves in the mirror, and they'll come to the realization of how important their law is in the dispensation of justice in this country, in the maintenance of peace and order in this country, and that going forward, they'll change their attitude and discharge their functions in a more fair, equitable, and objective manner than we have seen since the ascendance of President Hichilema into office, where, for all intents and purposes, the Constitutional Court has acted in a very biased manner towards anyone who wants to challenge the president. The Constitutional Court has acted in a very biased manner towards anyone who wants to challenge government, and the Constitutional Court has essentially seen itself or sees itself as an extension of the government of President Hichilema, and they see themselves as not an independent adjudicator, which is supposed to look at matters objectively and with the requisite integrity, so that they can be able to dispense justice in a fair and equitable manner. So those are our concerns regarding the Constitutional Court under the current dispensation of President Hichilema. Because, at the moment, we take these matters to court, like we have taken this matter today, where we are challenging the foreign trips that President Hichilema keeps making, where he has made a total of 49 foreign trips so far. So there's that aspect of it. But at a certain time, like during elections, we are going to be taking matters before the Constitutional Court, which will be emotionally charged matters related to an election, where you are challenging the outcome of an election. Such matters normally attract the attention and the participation of almost each and every citizen, because they are electoral matters. So our considered view is that if the Constitutional Court continues on the current trend, whereby they see themselves as an extension of President Hichilema's administration, they see themselves as being there to protect and shield President Hichilema and his administration, then if this same Constitutional Court presides on the electoral matters that might arise in 2026, and they conduct themselves in this same manner, then that might be a source of conflict, because people might not accept such kind of behavior, such kind of attitude, whereby they treat litigants, they treat people who bring matters before their court with a lot of contempt, with a lot of appetite for intimidation, with a lot of, lack of adequate decorum, where they basically treat people who bring matters before their court as if they are troublemakers. And yet, the only thing that we seek from the court is justice. The only thing that we seek from the Constitutional Court is justice. And the reason we seek justice from the Constitutional Court is because we are law-abiding citizens. We believe in the judicial system. So our expectation is that the Constitutional Court going forward will conduct itself with more objectivity, and they'll stop the mentality and the attitude and the behavior of harassing litigants who are challenging government and who are challenging President Hichilema, such as ourselves, because we deserve to be comfortable and we deserve to feel welcome before the Constitutional Court. When we appear before the Constitutional Court, we do not expect the court to harass litigants. We do not expect the court to harass us. We are not going to cite specific cases, but we want to put it on record that we do not appreciate being harassed by the Constitutional Court whenever we appear before it. We expect to be treated better because we are law-abiding citizens of this republic, and we have a duty and obligation to represent the interests of our party members, to represent the interests of our supporters before the Constitutional Court, and to have those issues deliberated upon in a fair and objective manner. So that is our submission with regard to the Constitutional Court. Coming to this issue, this case that we filed today, this will be our fourth matter that we are filing before the Constitutional Court under the new Dawn administration. And we are hopeful that we are going to get justice. We are hopeful that we are going to be made by a fair and objective court. And when we talk about getting justice, we are not necessarily saying that we want to win each and every case that we take before the Constitutional Court. Of course, that would be unreasonable. That would be totally unreasonable, because when you go to court, a matter can go either way. You can either win a matter or you can lose a matter. But our expectation is that even in cases where we lose a matter, the judgment that comes out of the court should be a sound judgment, should be a judgment that makes sense. And I must admit that so far I've not commented on the judgments that we have received from the Constitutional Court, but I want to put it on record that when I read the majority of the judgments that we have received from the Constitutional Court, they are not sound judgments. They are judgments that you can see that someone was literally stretching a particular matter in order to arrive at a particular conclusion. And how can you tell that? You can tell that by taking note of the fact that not all submissions were incorporated in the judgment. Because when you go to court as a petitioner, you make your submissions, you make your case, and then the other parties will respond. So when the judgment is being prepared, a sound judgment is supposed to talk about all the points that you raised as a petition and paraphrase those points, and then go to the responses that the respondent made and paraphrase those points, and then proceed to arrive at a judgment. But when you have a judgment whereby your points which you raised in the petition, the majority of those points are not captured in the judgment, they are not reflected in the judgment. The majority of the points which are reflected in the judgment are those which the respondent made. Then you can literally see, you can literally tell that this particular judgment is not a sound judgment because it does not fairly incorporate the arguments which were made by the parties, so that whoever reads the judgment will be able to see, oh, these are the points which the petitioner made, and these are the points which the respondent made. And this is how the court reasoned itself to arrive at this particular judgment. So from our standpoint, the quality of judgments that have so far come out of the Constitutional Court and the dispensation of the new Dawn administration they lack soundness. The majority of them, not all of them, but the majority of them are not sound. They are tilted to favor government, and that is a source of concern. It's a great source of concern, and we are hopeful that the court will reflect on these issues, and going forward, the court will actually ensure that it is more fair and equitable. Remember that the Constitutional Court is a people's court. It is a people's court, and people need to feel confident to take matters before this court. They need to feel that if they take a matter before this court, that matter is going to be fairly and equitably adjudicated. You know, that is the feeling that the Constitutional Court is supposed to espouse, you know, in the people of Zambia. That is the feeling, the kind of feeling which the Constitutional Court is supposed to espouse in the litigants that actually appear before it. So we are hopeful that the quality of judgments going forward are going to be more sound, and as well as the quality of rulings, they are going to be more sound, so that the Constitutional Court can espouse more confidence in the citizens of the Republic of Zambia. Thank you.